So as I'm sitting in my office doing a night duty routine in our clinic and sort of struggling with the results of last night's election, one of the things I want to do is channel my energy to be productive. I don't want to just whine. I don't want to just be upset. And so what I want to do today is take a couple minutes, just a couple minutes, and talk to you guys about guns and suicide. It's an issue that I think is not spoken about nearly enough, and unfortunately, I'm afraid it's going to be spoken about a lot less, or a lot less productively, at least in the coming years. So let me tell you a little bit about what we know. 2014, the most recent year we have official data, about 43,000 Americans died by suicide. It's the 10th leading cause of death. It's about 3 times as common as homicide. It's about 10,000 more people than died in auto accidents. We don't talk about it much, but it happens all the time. And with respect to guns, about half of those deaths were suicide, or half of those deaths, suicide deaths, were by guns. So that means about 20,000 Americans in 2014 alone died with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And the thing is, when you hear conversations about guns, it's never about suicide. Suicide's just as tragic as an accidental death or as a homicide, but it's never spoken about because it makes people uncomfortable. So today we're talking about suicide and we're talking about guns. Two difficult issues because today's a difficult day, and that's what we're going to do to be productive today. We're going to talk about it. So what do we know? We know that guns don't make people suicidal. So I'm not here saying overthrow the Second Amendment. I certainly have opinions on that, but that's not what this is about. Guns don't make healthy folks suddenly suicidal. But what they do, unfortunately do, is they take the risk of a suicidal individual dying and drastically increase it. So suicide is more than 5 times as common in a home with a gun, and that risk goes way much higher if the gun is stored unsafely. So if the gun's stored loaded, if the gun's stored in a sort of unlocked location or a bedside table instead of a gun safe with a trigger lock. So we know possession matters. We know that storage matters. What we also know is that there are a number of studies, some of them out of my lab, but a lot of them not. A lot of them out of the Means Matter campaign at Harvard, showing that certain forms of legislation are actually quite effective at reducing suicide rates. Background checks, waiting periods. Again, none of these things threaten the Second Amendment. None of these things say, come and get the guns. These things say, well, let's be careful about how quickly folks get guns and who gets the gun. Not overall violating rights or anything like that, but just being careful. But I also know, given the current trend in the federal government now, the sudden shift, and also living in Mississippi, sometimes those laws aren't possible. And so there's another line of research out there led by folks by Kathy Barber, looking at just safe storage. And so here's the thing we can do as a country. We encourage folks when they've had a drink to let someone else hold their keys. We encourage people to be careful about how they store other dangerous objects. Why can't we take these same lessons as a country, as a culture, and apply them to guns? So if you've had a distressing event, let your friend hold your gun. Make sure that's legal in your state. If not, find a safe option for safe storage or store it outside your house for a while till you're feeling better. Just as when you let somebody hold your keys temporarily and get it back, think about that with your gun. We can also just encourage folks in general to store their guns safely. Use a trigger lock. Store it unloaded and separate from ammunition. I understand that a lot of folks store their gun less safely due to a fear that someone's going to come into their house at night and they need the gun right there to save them. But the data, and I know data aren't the best answer for emotional topics, but the data aren't unclear about this. It doesn't make you safer. It makes you more likely to die, or someone else more likely to die. So we as a country can sort of come together about the idea, fine, folks have guns, and guns themselves don't cause suicide, but suicidal folks with guns are at risk. And sometimes the folks who think they'll never think about suicide sometimes find themselves in a position where that's all they can think about. And we don't solve problems well when all we can think about is suicide. We solve them well ahead of time. So you have to plan ahead of time. So here's my attempt to be productive today as I ponder what all this means for my children, for our future. But let's be safe. Let's talk about suicide. Let's have conversations about common ground solutions, and let's move forward. Let's do something that saves lives. Let's see a positive come out of all of this with a reduced suicide rate. Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks.